Okay. Thank you for your patience, everyone. So we're now going to call the June 8th meeting of the Trinity County Planning Commission to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the floor to public comment. During the public comment period, members of the public may address the Planning Commission on any matter not listed on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Do we have any public comment from the room?
Terry Mines, Junction City. I realize a lot of you are actually fairly new at what you do, and if you've been up there, I probably haven't been up here and kind of explained personal responsibility when you're a planning commissioner and or a supervisor for that matter. When you make decisions, when you're sitting there, they have to be in the best interest of the county. If you make any decisions that are personal or for your friends, you actually open up yourself for personal liability. The county doesn't get sued, you do. And I don't want to scare you or anything, but you should absolutely talk to the county council if you're not up to date on exactly how that works. Because if there's any collusion going on, like we've seen with the Board of Supervisors and the way Ms. Cox has been working for TAA and Jim Underwood, I would assume you guys are going to get the same kind of pressure here pretty soon from the community. So please be advised, I'm giving you your understanding clearly right now, that you should all talk to Margaret and get a clear understanding of this before you start making any further decisions in this community. They have to be for the best interest of the community, not for a certain person or little group. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comments from the room?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Tom Belenko, Douglas City. I made a similar comment to the board at the last meeting regarding procedures for appeals. Since most of those appeals start here, I think it's appropriate maybe for this body to weigh in and maybe even flush out a procedure. We have two kind of routes that appeals take. One is governed by Trinity County Code 8.90. Those are appeals of like a violation or a fine. And that one, believe it or not, has the more detailed process. There's timelines, there's when you have, what you submit, when you submit it. The other appeal, the one that you, I think, more frequently see when these were written, probably we saw that more often, that's why it had more attention, are under, in the zoning code 17.32. That has the 10-day requirement to file that we're familiar with. And then there's 10 days for the clerk to notify the commission and put it on calendar, but that's where the procedures end. As we see the appeals get more involved, which is to say you tend to see lawyers on both sides, I think we can all benefit from some procedure like the way most process works. The moving party submits their brief first, the responding party responds, and then the moving party gets to reply to that. So you get kind of three, and then somewhere in there, the staff has to weigh in. So rather than us like sandbagging staff or trying to ambush each other, if we had a protocol where you say, okay, you file within 10 days, and then we set up for a planning commission in 6 weeks. Based on that, the appellant's opening brief, if you call it that, whatever it is, their brief is due on X day. The respondent responds, they can reply, give staff time, give yourselves time. We still will come to the microphone and make our arguments, answer your questions, but it lets us kind of articulate our arguments better. So I don't know how best to do that. I think it would probably be pretty easy if we workshopped it for, 15, 20 minutes or something. I think we could come up with a reasonable approach. But I do think it's something that would help us in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. And the one that you referred to initially was 17.89, is that right?
It's 8.90
8.90. Okay,
and 17.32.
got that one. Thank you. Thank you. Any additional comments from the room? Any comments on Zoom? Okay, thank you. Hearing no further public comment from the room or on Zoom, I'm going to close the public comment period. And we'll now move on to the regular calendar. So we have some items continued from May 25th, 2023. The first is the minutes. Item 1, approve the minutes of the April 27th, 2023 meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Sharp, second by Commissioner Barrett. We don't need a roll call vote, right? We're all here. How many vote aye? Aye. Any opposed? We have a one.
Aye. You said or opposed.
My apologies. So we have 5 ayes.
Sure, I wasn't saying something funny.
So what I'd like to do now, the chair has the ability under the bylaws to reorder the agenda. I would like to bring item 4 up for our consideration because I believe that may save some of you who are waiting in the room some time. So can staff provide an update on item 4?
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, Drew Labani, Trinity County Planning Department, Cannabis Division Director. As of today, the approval of CCL 132 and its associated environmental document has been rescinded, and therefore the appeal is moot.
Okay, do we have any comments from the applicant or the appellant? Do we have any technical clarification or questions from the commissioners? So if I understand this correctly, this item would be re-agended at some future point, potentially for approval, and at that time, the appellant, if they so choose, could appeal. Would they have to pay an additional appeals?
No, I believe the appeal fee would be applied to any future appeal.
Okay. Any other technical clarifying questions? No. So then, does this take a motion, or do we just go ahead and declare it moot and it's no longer on the agenda?
If Margaret's available to answer that procedural question, I would appreciate it.
I am available. The item is withdrawn because the underlying license has been pulled. So therefore, there's nothing for the commission to take action on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then we are,
Need to open up for public comment.
We don't need to open it up for public comment because again, this item is being pulled. It's not being heard tonight. It will be public comment will accompany the future agenda item.
okay. So then thank you for coming. If you're here for item 4, drive safe. So we will return to the regular agenda with item 2, which is Brown Act updates and governance session by the County Council. So Ms. Long, I believe that's you.
It is. Good evening. We have a PowerPoint. I'm hoping we can pull it up. Like you can't, I can likely share my screen, but if we can get that up there, it'd be great.
I'm trying to get it, Margaret. It's a new computer.
You are doing great. And I can share my screen too if it becomes too difficult.
Yeah, it's not wanting to pull up the stick. I'll give you the spotlight. Share your screen, please.
Okay, 1 second. Okay. Now my computer's decided to be very slow, but we'll get it. I got it, if that works.
Yeah, thank you. We can see your screen.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for technology. So thank you for this opportunity to this update. We do try to do them every once in a while, and there has been some significant changes to the Brown Act. So this is a good time for us to take another look at them and have a conversation with the Planning Commission, answer any questions you have. We also put a little bit about governance in as well, because that's commonly a topic that you face. So hopefully, again, this is a little bit of a deep dive on a quick basis. So feel free to jump in if you have any questions. I can see you. So if you want to raise your hand or just jump in, feel free to. I think at this point, we're all aware what the Brown Act is for. It really is, even if you think about the Brown Act and you think about the concept that everything needs to be done in public, nothing can be done in closed doors, you'll understand the concept of the Brown Act. It really is geared towards making sure that the public has access to all the information and all the deliberation a public entity utilizes in order to make its decision. So it's just really important to keep that in the back of your mind. And with that, you usually can err on the side of compliance with the Brown Act. A majority of a governing body meets to deliberate or discuss a matter within the jurisdiction. And we have these items underlined because it's very specific in terms of what it means. So any gathering, can mean it's pretty broadly construed. I mean, it could be everyone going out to lunch. It could be everyone meeting in the parking lot, or it could be everybody meeting in a conference room. Any gathering applies. Of course, your commission has a 5-person membership, which means anytime more than 2 members are meeting, you have a quorum or a majority. And so Brown Act takes in place. And anything within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission cannot be discussed, deliberated, or even be heard without having it publicly noticed and available for the public to participate in. There are a lot of issues that come up because, again, coming to these meetings is very straightforward. You have staff who prepares an agenda. Everything is done out in the public, and Planning Commission doesn't even have closed sessions. So you really are, everything is done out in public. Where it comes into play is what we typically call a serial meeting. And this is what we always have to remember, is that when the process called the serial meeting occurring is when a majority of the governing body is discussing something outside of the presence of the public. And this can happen via email, it can happen via telephone call or personal calls. And so we like to remember is that when you're talking about an issue with one other commissioner and the issue is within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, you do not have the capacity or capability of talking with anybody else on the commission about this issue. The serial meetings, we usually kind of describe them as the daisy chain, where Commissioner A talks to Commissioner B, issue that's going on, and then Commissioner B talks to Commissioner C. The moment Commissioner B talks to Commissioner C, they have now talked to a majority of the governing board, and the deliberation is not correct. The other one we call spokes on a bike, where somebody in the middle, it doesn't even have to be a commissioner, it can be staff, reaches out to each individual commissioner and tells them what the other commissioners are going to do. So for example, if one of the staff members says, hey, we're thinking of this item's coming forward, from what I hear, these other 2 commissioners are going to vote this way, so I just wanted to give you a heads up. Simply by doing that, there's a violation of the Brown Act. It's important to remember that staff does not fall under the Brown Act. We are not governing bodies. So we have the ability as staff to talk to each and every one of you individually. But what you have to be careful and cautious about is that when we talk to you, we don't tell you what other commissioners are doing. So again, I recommend when staff is emailing commissioners, if you're doing all of the commissioners, wonderful, make sure it's BCC'd so you don't create that potential problem. And make sure that if a staff member starts to talk about what another commissioner is doing, that you stop them and make sure it's very clear that you cannot have that communication outside of a noticed public meeting. Certain things that they often get in for them, and so I do want to make sure. I work for a jurisdiction that every break, the whole entire board goes out and has lunch. And while that doesn't look good, it's not a violation of the Brown Act, because retreats and gatherings, lunches, those types of ceremonial activities not qualify as a meeting. What we're really looking for is if you're going there to discuss matters within this jurisdiction. So if you want to go talk about your cousin's graduation or the new car you're going to buy, you're welcome to do so. But the moment any topic within your jurisdiction comes up, that's where we're going to have a problem. So you can have these conferences, retreats, and lunches. They're fine. But again, make sure that you're keeping it to matters in the jurisdiction. And remember, when you're out in public, the public is watching you and they don't really know what you're talking about. So it could start a problem if multiple commissioners are engaging in conversation in the public. The other thing is you can go to general meetings. For example, if there's a big meeting regarding something within the jurisdiction being hosted at an event center, you can do that. Make sure, again, it's open to the public and it's advanced. You can go to ceremonies, social events, or there's times where you need to actually have kind of work sessions. And we call those ad hocs. And even the planning commission level, you can have an ad hoc, which is a group of less than the majority of the board meeting with staff to talk about a specific issue and make a recommendation to the remainder of the commission. Nothing can happen there that's decision making, and nothing can happen there that's final. It's just an opportunity to kind of workshop and have it publicly. So for commission, as with boards of directors, we have same regular meetings, special meetings, and emergency meetings. I believe. Oh, it says I'm unstable. Am I coming through?
Yeah, a little bit garbled every once in a while, but I think we're getting everything.
Okay, good. Yes, I was noticing it said unstable, and I know that the internet up there sometimes goes down. Just flag me if I'm freezing. So you have your regular, you have your special, and you also have your emergency meetings. Now in Trinity County, in the years I've been there, we've never had to utilize emergency meetings because those are really when there's a work stoppage or any major public health and safety issue. And typically those bypass planning commission and just go straight to the board by code. So typically you won't see those. But other meetings, which are set by regulation, and then your special meetings, which is everything else. When you're having a special meeting, you aren't required to have generalized public comment. You are just coming there for 1 or 2 or 3 specific issues, and that's all that you're dealing with. The main beef of what your jurisdiction or what you should be doing as planning commission typically happens at the regular meeting. And the reason that is because the regular meeting has a 72-hour posting requirement, whereas a special meeting only has 24. So in order to give the public more time, again, it's recommended to use the regular meetings as much as possible. There are emergencies or things that require special meetings, and that's why they're available, and that's why you have to give a 24-hour notice. And again, the agendas are pretty much set by law in terms of what they say. They have to have enough information to give the public an understanding of what's going on, and they have to describe what action is going to be taken. So you'll see, we'll say action words like, enact or recommend, or action words when there's a decision that has to be made on. Whereas when there's not a decision, it's informational. It'll say stuff like informational or presentation. So that's what we're looking at in regard to what our notices are going to look like.
Margaret, can I ask a question?
Of course.
So the Planning Commission adopted bylaws a couple months ago. I'm not sure of the status of those, if those have to be confirmed by the Board of Supervisors or anything. But in the bylaws, we changed our meetings so that, the second Thursday of every month is our regular meeting. And then we have the option for special meetings. So we're potentially considering having a meeting on June 22nd. That would fall under the special meeting category with the 24-hour notice.
That
Is
is
that
correct.
correct?
Yep, that is correct. So your
Okay.
regular meetings are what are occur every month. They're already basically pre-noticed. So the public knows that every third Thursday at 6, you guys are meeting. Anything else that's not that specific time is a special meeting, which has the 24-hour notice requirement.
Does it have the same notice for the newspaper?
So there is no notice requirement for meetings. What you're talking about is when there's notice for publication requirements, and the publication requirements are the same for a special meeting and a regular meeting. So if you have like a 10-day publication requirement in order to enact a zoning regulation, then that would be the same whether it's being heard at a special meeting or a regular meeting. But again, in the Brown Act, there's no requirement that these are published in the newspaper. It's just required that they're published on your website and made available at 3 locations within the jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so these are the new areas that are coming into play. The first one being public access. So, kind of general rules, I'll go first and then I'll tell you kind of the new restrictions, but attendance has to be open to the public. It has to be made available and convenient. We have in our provisions mechanisms if individuals have disabilities or need accommodations, they have a requirement of asking in advance. We have abilities to accommodate. But one of the regulations says that when an individual from the public is making a presentation, we may and most likely should ask them to identify themselves so we can follow up with them and make sure we take down, but we can't require them to give their name or their address to participate, nor can we require that they be a member of this community. It's open to the public in the broadest sense. Anything that has to do with written material, we have to make it available. And again, the Public Record Acts law has provisions in this, but in general, the rule is any written material needs to be provided to the public. So we need to bring copies to it or posted online in advance. Any information that's received will be published as part of the minutes. Or they'll be published as an addendum to the agenda, but we'll publish everything that's provided to us as long as it's appropriate. And again, made available to the public upon request. Any member of the public can record the meeting, audio or video. We cannot stop them. We do ask typically that they stay away from coming behind the dais, since we do have sometimes confidential information back there. So we ask them to stay in the back of the room, but they're allowed to videotape and audio record. And we do have to, again, as I said, have public comment before every agenda item, regardless of whether action is taken or not. Now, presentations are different if we're just providing presentation, but any discussion items and any action items, the public has the right to speak for each and every one of them. As I said before, the public also has the right to speak during general public comment at the beginning of a regular meeting. We're not required to have general public comment at a special meeting, because again, that's just specifically for those items that are on the agenda. And we can't really stop what people are saying. So again, we try to be very broad in letting people under their First Amendment rights have the freedom to say whatever they want, as long as it's we can even closely tie it back to the agenda item. With something within the jurisdiction, which is very limited. But as we've seen in other jurisdictions, it doesn't mean it's infinite. We can restrict hate speech. We can restrict threatening speech, and there's stuff we'll talk about that we can restrict, and we should restrict. We should not allow that to take place, because that prohibits people from being able to access and feel comfortable in these meetings. So we do want to make sure that we have provisions in place and a knowledge of what we can and can't do. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. So the new laws that came into effect is that, and started in January 23, is there are new rules regarding what happens when people are being disruptive in meetings. Typically before, there was no real direction. And so the recommendation was, you stop the meeting and you try to calmly ask the people to leave and you call law enforcement as necessary. But with some of the meetings that were taking place all over California, they came up with a new rule, which is if an individual is acting in a way that disrupts the meeting. Now, that doesn't mean they used a curse word. That doesn't mean they are passionate about an issue. It means they're actually bringing the meeting to a stop. And again, this can be through using hate speech, This can be through shouting out from the audience. There's a bunch of different behaviors. If they are doing that, the chair of the planning commission has to give them a warning that if they continue this disruptive behavior, they will be removed. After that warning, if they continue that behavior, it is appropriate to ask them to leave and to utilize law enforcement as well to get them to leave if they're not willing to leave. My recommendation is typically don't forget to take breaks. So if this is all going on, take a break while they're being escorted out. Make sure that, you try to diffuse the situation as best you can. But we now again have provisions in place for if people are not acting or acting in a manner that disrupts the meeting. So any questions on this new law? Okay, the rules are still in place that even after you remove the disruptive individual, if the room is still not able to back to business and it continues, you do still have the ability to clear the room, obviously, except for media can always stay there. But again, typically I haven't seen that being needed. Typically, if you can ask the person to leave, get them to leave, and then try to restore the meeting, it's been able to work. But again, it's very important that we can't ask people to leave because they're passionate, or they're disagreeing with us, or even being insulting. But we can ask people to leave if they're being threatening, if they're threatening force, or if their speech is of such a nature that it disrupts the meeting, such as using racial slurs or using hate speech or anything that could constitute, the Supreme Court has determined is so offensive that it would offend the human decency to have to sit through it. Okay, next new law that came in place. This is our thankful to COVID law, is that we had all those weird teleconference laws as they were trying to work through the new system. And now that COVID's dying down and everyone paid all this great money for these Zoom equipments, the legislator came up with some new rules and said you can still utilize Zoom. You can still utilize remote meetings, but they wanted to put in place rules. So these are the rules we have in place. Our notice has to say whether Zoom is provided. Ours does. We have a provision. If you're going to access by Zoom, you can utilize this. Today, we've got 17 people on Zoom, which is fantastic. And it's always going to be in our agenda. We have to allow the people on Zoom to have access to public comment, which we do. Again, we check who's in the room first, and then we check online to see if anyone has comment. We cannot require people to submit their comments in writing. They have to be able to orally state them as well. If we're going to do this remote meetings, we do have to have audio and visual. So back in the good old days, it was more of a conference call system where people could call in. The new rules are that you have to have audio and visual in order for it to be considered a proper remote meeting. If individuals are calling in remotely and they are in a closed session nature, or there's something that's being done confidentiality, which wouldn't really apply here, they do have to identify anyone else in the room who's 18 years and older. But again, that typically wouldn't apply here since we don't do closed sessions. All votes taken during a teleconference meeting have to be done by roll call. Now, a teleconference meeting means when one of the commissioners is teleconference. It doesn't mean when the members of the public are on it. The rules when the member of the public are on it and no commissioners are on Zoom is that you have to announce it, 5-0 vote, which the chair did wonderfully and was a great example for us earlier, even though I think another commissioner was trying to play with her, but it was done correctly. And that's exactly what you have to do, identify the vote. If one of you had been on Zoom, you would have had to do a roll call for every single vote. So that means the clerk would have to ask you individually to state whether you're yay or nay. And the hard part, especially with technology, is that if for any reason the Zoom goes down, the meeting has to stop until it's restored. So for the public, if they come on and they think they're supposed to be a meeting, but there's no link or there's no access, they can have the confidence that if they stay on long enough, it will come back up or it will be continued. You cannot continue to move forward if it's not working. And I know the board meeting last week dealt with that. They had to wait until it got restored and then they were able to move forward.
So Margaret, just so I'm understanding correctly, if one of the commissioners is participating remotely, they have to, have audio, but we also need to be able to see them?
Correct. Yes.
Because that's a little difficult with some of our internet capabilities in Trinity. So, okay, just wanted to make that clear.
No, it
Okay,
is.
thank you.
And we've been dealing with that. And so, for example, I've had folks have to appear from hospitals and there is confidentiality issues related to the hospital. Obviously, other patients have the right to privacy. And so there are certain exceptions in those types of scenarios, but that's it. I mean, we're talking HIPAA is pretty much going to be your only exception. Otherwise, you've got to have a way for the public to see your facial reactions as you're going. And that's specifically what it says. They need to be able to see the non-verbal body language that occurs from a commissioner when they're hearing an item. Okay.
Thank you.
Of course. Remote attendance. So again, there's it typically, again, before, if you were going to be remote, there was this whole procedure you had to go through where you had to notice on your agenda where you were going to be. You had to let the public come into wherever you were. I have some great stories that we won't get anymore. I had a commissioner once that was also a police officer, and he had to be on duty. And so he literally had to post an agenda outside his patrol car and let anybody in the patrol car that wanted to do that anymore. Rules are in place to for members of the governing body to appear remotely under emergency circumstances. So the definition of emergency circumstances is just cause or emergency. So just cause is defined, I list the definitions. It's typically if you have a childcare need or a grandparent need or a domestic partner need, you can appear remotely. You've got a contagious illness. It doesn't just qualify as COVID. If you got the stomach flu, please don't come in. we can arrange for you to appear remotely. If you've got a physical or mental disability, or that if you're on travel on business for the legislative body or another state agency. So if you're going off for a work trip for your private work, it doesn't qualify. But if you're down at commissioner conference down in the Bay Area, it does apply because you're traveling on behalf of the jurisdiction. You do not have to give notice of it in advance, except for we ask you to, because we have to make sure that we can arrange everything appropriately. But you can actually ask at the beginning of the meeting for ability to appear remotely and move on from there. But the related to just causes, you can only do it twice per year. The other one is the emergency situation. So this is when there's a medical emergency or something that's coming into play that is prevents you from attending. And it really is, you know, if you are having an emergency or having a need, you have to go to the hospital, you're taking care of somebody who's really sick. These are a little bit of different rule for these. You need to get the governing body's approval. So you actually, all the rules apply, but you have to, at the beginning of the meeting, have to vote. The remaining board members have to vote to allow you to attend via remotely. And you do have to give a description of why you're not available. It doesn't have to be like a description of what your medical condition is, but I'm sick, I'm in the hospital, I have a family member who's sick, just something of that. Now, we don't want to know your diagnosis, we just want to know that. And that one, you have the ability to use a lot more. So it's you're allowed to use it up to 20% of the meetings. So those are the two mechanisms you can appear remotely, utilizing those. Any questions on those two?
I have a question. So I don't believe we've been following this. So does this nullify any of our actions, you know, since we weren't aware that these were the rules?
Nope. No, we're fine on this. This has just been put into place. So we're giving you the notice of it now, and it has kind of had a slow rollout. So we will make sure we utilize it going forward. But no, it would not nullify your prior decisions. Again, it just is something that we're going to put in place and use moving forward. But it has just been put into law. It's not something that we've had access to for a while. So we're good to go.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Okay. Hold on a second. There's thunder and lightning here, and my daughter was at swim practice outside, so I'm just arranging for her to get picked up. Okay. So again, remote appearances. That is the part that I'm going to talk about. I have Sean Cameron from my office. He wanted to go over a little bit of Rosenberg's as well, and then we'll take questions when he's done.
Hello, good evening. So yeah, I'm going to go over the Rosenberg's rules of order. And these are they're generally accepted rules of order for parliamentarian procedure and, you know, so public meetings. And they're generally accepted across the country, and especially in California, the bulk of legislative bodies use these as sort of a framework to govern meetings, including the Planning Commission, which just adopted them as part of their bylaws. And they're made up of essentially 4 pillars. The rules should establish order. They should be clear. They should be user-friendly, and they should enforce the will of the majority while protecting the rights of the minority. We want to balance encouraging discussion, but also facilitating decision-making. This was sort of spoken about before, but in order to start the meeting, you have to establish a quorum, which is the minimum number of members of the body that need to be present in order to hold the meeting. The default rule is 1 more than half, so 3 of 5 is necessary to establish the quorum, and that's true of the Planning Commission as well. A majority of the members present may approve an item. So if you only have 3 members present, you have a quorum. And then if you vote on an item, the general rule is that if you get 2 of the 3 present, then the item passes. There are sort of special items that may not fall under that. And they're sort of, like I said, they're special items. They're not the normal sort of items. So generally it's 2 of the 3 in order to pass the item. And a tie vote does not pass.
I'm going to jump in here because that's the general rule, but you guys are a lot of the exceptions because a lot of the majority requirements for land use based items are a majority of not those present, but a majority of those on the body. So we will try to make sure that we tag when, what your amount of votes is you're going to need beforehand. So sometimes you're going to need 4 out of 5. Sometimes you're going to need 3. Sometimes you're going to need a majority. And so we do our best to tag which of those are because it's usually written in the code.
So now the role of the chair. The chair essentially leads the meeting, and they're responsible for applying the rules of conduct. And all decisions by the chair are final unless overruled by a majority of the legislative body itself. And the chair should generally try to facilitate discussion and take a less active role in the debate. And they should, along those lines, they should not generally make or second a motion. The role of the chair is sort of to run the meeting, make sure people are following the rules and that there's, appropriate decorum and that people are staying focused on the items and that you're, making progress with the items and moving the agenda along. So the basic format for an agenda item. So the agenda acts as a roadmap for the meeting, just like this meeting, but just as was done in this meeting, the order of the items can change. The chair can adjust the items depending on what, they deem to be more efficient or, better to do it for that meeting. The basic procedure is that the chair announces the item. Then the chair invites the appropriate person or staff to speak on the item and sort of, give details as to what it's concerning and, particulars of the item. And then the chair asks the legislative members if there are any technical or clarifying questions. And then after that, they invite the public to comment. After that's finished up, then the chair asks for a motion and a second. Once that happens, there's a motion on the table, and the chair then invites discussion from the board or the commission to discuss the item. And then once that discussion is wrapped up, then the chair or the secretary takes the vote and then announces the result of that vote. Next is courtesy and decorum. So the goal of the meeting is to have a forum for the members of the body and the members of the public where they can attend to the business of that body efficiently, fairly, and with full participation. Debate should be free and open, but also focused on the item at hand. We want to essentially allow people what they, whatever they want to say about the item, but it needs to remain focused on the item itself. And so it should focus on the issue and the policy in question and not on personalities either. We don't want to focus on, I don't like Joe or I don't like, something about somebody's personality. It should be focusing on the item and what you do or do not like about the item itself. And it's the responsibility of the chair and the body to maintain common courtesy and decorum. It's the role of the chair and the body to sort of assert those rules that we mentioned previously. If there's, decorum that's not facilitating discussion and it's getting out of hand, then it's the role of the chair to sort of raise that and to point that out and, so that the meeting can move on. And the chair has the right to cut off discussion that is too personal, too loud, or too crude, as we've spoken about before.
I do have one last question. So before I invite all the other commissioners to ask questions. So if a member is recusing themselves for a particular, conflict or issue, my understanding is that they are asked to leave the room. Are they also, in our particular case, asked to leave the lobby since the PA system is broadcast in the lobby?
Great question. So there is a very standard procedure when somebody declares a conflict. They have to announce what the conflict is. Again, looking at 20 words or less, it's my neighbor's property. I grew up with the person involved, something of that nature. They have to leave the room. They can't discuss the item. They have to do it right at the beginning. They have to leave the room. They can hear what's going on. What they can't do is influence what is going on, which is why they're asked to leave a room, so that their reactions, their facial expressions don't influence the remainder of the commission, but they are allowed to listen to it outside. There's no prohibition against that. It's a public meeting. They just can't influence the result based on a conflict.
Great, thank you. So commissioners, what questions do you have?
Great question.
Commissioners?
Doing pretty good. I think.
That was very, very helpful. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the information.
And we're here to help. If anything comes up, feel free to reach out with any individual questions. Ed has complete contact to us, as does Drew. So or reach out to us directly, but we're happy to answer any questions that may come up.
Sure.
Yes, Commissioner Barrett.
I have a question. If a person opts out of the commission and says, a conflict of interest, they're allowed to listen. Are they allowed to speak? Like, can they speak as a member of the public? And if they conflict of interest, are they ineligible to talk since they were on the commission or will be on the commission? How does that work?
That's a great question. So the answer is that they are allowed to listen, but they're not allowed to participate, which means they are not allowed to come in as a member of the public and participate, with two exceptions. And those exceptions are if the matter has something to do with them and there's nobody else can speak on it. So if it's related to, for example, your property and you don't have anyone else who can speak on it, or if it's related to your business and no one else can speak on it. But that's a very, very narrow exceptions. So typically if you have a business partner or a spouse or somebody else who can present, they're obligated to do so and you're not allowed to. So the global rule is you can't participate at all with those exceptions.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, we will go ahead and close this agenda item. Thank you. And we will move on now to agenda item 3, conditional use permit P-23-04.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Commissioner Sharp.
I'll need to recuse from this as I am involved in the construction of this project. So I will step out.
Thank you, Commissioner Sharp. Just hang on a second. So we'll move on. The applicant is requesting approval for construction of a 1,769 square foot addition to the Kinder Kids Montessori School. Applicant Kinder Kids Montessori, Jolene Edwards, agent. Address 31341 State Highway 3, Weaverville. Assessor parcel number 024-380-008-000. Planner Mitchell Wexler. So the staff will make a presentation first, and then we'll invite you to speak. Mitchell, please.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. As you all know, my name is Mitchell Wexler. I am the Assistant Planner for the Trinity County Planning Department. Okay, this item is about P-23-04, which pertains to a proposed addition to the existing childcare facility on site. The two-story expansion of 1,781 square feet, apologies for the typo, will be built over one space in the parking lot and the dirt foundation located on the northeast edge of the building. The expansion will allow the facility to expand its capacity and serve up to 28 children. The project also proposes an exception from the off-street parking requirement to allow a portion of the off-street parking requirement to be met at an off-site location within 300 feet of the project site. This exception is specifically allowed by County Code Section 17.30.090 with approval from the Planning Commission. The parcel is part of the retail commercial zoning district. It shares this district with two of its neighboring parcels and its commercial general plan designation with three of its neighboring parcels. Water and sewer services are provided by the Weaverville Sanitary District. Fire protection is provided by the Weaverville Fire Department or Fire Protection District, and electricity is provided by the Trinity Public Utility District. The lot is 0.38 acres in size. The parcel currently has finalized permits for two HVACs, a rehab structure, a patio cover, and a re-roof. These permits were finalized as of 2019 and 2020, 2019, 2021, and 22, respectively. The Montessori is currently the sole building on the parcel. The permit was initially submitted on February 10th of 2023. The proposed addition of the existing structure would enlarge the capacity of the school, providing room for up to 28 children, as previously mentioned. The parcel has a general plan designation of commercial, again, as previously mentioned. Commercial areas are designated within general communities and are intended to indicate the desirable location of various commercial developments. Commercial developments may include a community business district, highway commercial, and recreational commercial. Lot sizes may range from 10,000 square feet to 5 acres. This project is a commercial development that operates as a childcare facility, Kinder Kids Montessori as we know it. The parcel is 0.41 acres or 16,552.8 square feet. For this reason, the project is found to be consistent with the requirements of the general plan. The parcel is located in the C1 zoning district. The purpose of this district is to provide locations for the distribution and sale of rental of goods or services of primarily a retail nature. The C1 district allows for childcare facilities as a principal use, so long as the number does not exceed 11 children. A facility serving 12 or more children is allowed with a conditional use permit. The building is required to be set back 50 feet from the center line of the right-of-way and must have a height restriction of 25 feet. The front yard setback is required to be 10 feet. The interior and exterior yard setbacks should be 10 feet, and with the exception of other commercial zones. The rear yard setback is required to be a 6-foot minimum, and with the exception of other commercial or industrial zones. The maximum lot coverage allowed by structures on the parcel is 40%. The site plan shows that the proposed building would not meet the interior side yard setback requirement of 10 feet. However, because the neighboring parcel is also zoned as retail commercial, the setback is not required. The 50-foot building setback from the center line of Highway 3 will be met by the expansion at a distance of 52 feet from the center line. The required rear yard setback is met, and the new structure shall not bring the total portion of the parcel covered to 40%. One parking space will be taken from the lot, and the number of spaces remaining will not cover the requirement. To supplement these parking needs, New Apostolic Church is located within 300 feet of Kinder Kids Montessori and has given written permission for the use of their parking lot. When added to existing spaces, that parking lot allows for Kinder Kids Montessori to meet the parking requirement for their development. The exception to allow a portion of the off-street parking requirement to be met at an off-site location within 300 feet of the project site is specifically allowed by County Code Section 17.30.90, subsection B, with approval from the Planning Commission. As stated in County Code Section 17.30.90, subsection C, subsection 2, subsection A, joint use of parking facilities may be allowed when there is no conflict in time of use. The project proposes the use of the project proposes to use portion of the off-street parking on the adjacent property, which is parcel 024-380-027, which is developed as a church. The daycare center would typically operate Monday through Friday, and activities at the church would primarily occur on the weekends. As such, the joint use of parking facilities on the church property would be appropriate, as there would be a limited potential for conflicts in the time of use. The Trinity County Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, over here. The project site is located within the Airport Compatibility Zone D, which is an area defined as having a relatively low risk of, or a relative risk level of low, pardon me. The project proposes a 2-story expansion to an existing childcare facility that would not generate visual distractions, wildlife attractants, or tall structures. The use would also not result in a large congregation of people, and is not a use type that is specifically discouraged in Zone D by the Trinity County Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. To be specific, it is a preschool. The nearest type of service that would have these issues would be a school. Given that this is a preschool, that does not apply. According to the CEQA guidelines, section 15.303, Class 3 consists of construction and location of limited numbers of new, small facilities or structures, installation of small new equipment and facilities in small structures, and the conversion of existing small structures from one use to another, where only minor modifications are made in the exterior of the structure. Subsection C clarifies that this includes a store, motel, office, restaurant, or similar structure not involving the use of significant amounts of hazardous substances and not exceeding 2,500 square feet in floor area. Since the project proposes an addition to an existing child care facility that would be less than 2,500 square feet, it meets the criteria of section 15.303. Findings of fact. Trinity County Code section 17.32.010 states the following. A use permit is granted at the discretion of the Planning Commission or the Planning Director and is not the automatic right of any applicant. In considering an application for a use permit, the following guidelines shall be observed. One would be sound principles of land use. A use permit shall be granted upon sound principles of land use. Kind of circular there. And the finding with that is the conditional use permit would allow an expansion of an existing childcare facility to allow it to serve more than 12 children, which is consistent with the commercial land use designation and is conditionally permitted use in the C1 or retail commercial zoning district. Number 2, not injurious. A use permit shall not be granted if it will be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or if it results in the creation of a public nuisance. In addressing point 2, as proposed in condition, and the daycare facility expansion will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, or result in the creation of a public nuisance. So, subsection or section number 3, plan consistency. A use permit must comply with the objectives of the general or specific plan for the area in which it is located. Sticky pages. Since the project proposes expansion of a use that is consistent with the commercial land use designation and is a conditionally permitted use in the C1 zoning district, issuance of the conditional use permit would comply with the objectives of the general or specific plan for the area in which the project is located. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number PC 2023 05, approving P 23 04 for a conditional use permit to allow more than 12 children at the Kinder Kids Montessori and the ability to provide off-site parking within 300 feet of the project. And the attachments are listed on this page.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to speak? Okay, that's. Very excited. Okay, thank you. All right, so do the commissioners have any technical or clarifying questions of either staff or the applicant?
I don't know.
Okay. So do we have any public comment in the room on this agenda item? Do we have any public comment on Zoom? Okay, at this point, I would invite a motion by the commissioners.
I'll make a motion that we accept resolution number PC-2023-05, approving P-23-04 for the conditional use permit to allow more than 12 children at the Kinder Kids Montessori and the ability to provide off-site parking within 300 feet of the project site.
Motion by Commissioner Heaton. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Barrett. Do we have any discussion?
It seems to me pretty straightforward. It'd be foolish not to continue. And it's like, why hold this thing up? It seems like it blesses the, gives this business opportunity to grow and expand. And it's like, it's a great project. I say, let's do her. Let's quit wasting time.
Any other discussion? No, we think it's a great project. Thank you very much for coming forward with this. So at this point, do we need a roll call vote?
We have a resolution.
Correct. Thank you.
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Ellis, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Chair Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. 4-0. Motion.
Thank you. That concludes this agenda item, and we will invite Commissioner Sharp to rejoin our meeting. Good luck. This is cool. We've already covered item 4 for those of you who may have joined us late. Then we are going to move on now to item 5, variance VAR-23-03. The applicant is requesting a variance for commercial cannabis cultivation within a 1,000-foot setback from Hayfork Seventh-day Adventist Church. Applicant Brian Sullivan. Address 136 North Oak Avenue, Hayfork. Assessor parcel number 014-330-060-000. Planner Mitchell Wexler. Mr. Wexler.
Thank you. So, Trinity County Municipal Code Section 17.43.050 provides limitation on the location of cannabis cultivation activities. One of them is a setback requirement, which requires a 1,000-foot setback from the following: youth-oriented facilities, a school, any church, or residential treatment facility. The project proposes a variance from this requirement to allow a cannabis cultivation site approximately 885 feet away from the Hayfork Seventh-day Adventist Church. I would like to transition to a memo, though, that corrects a few erroneous statements. So, dear members of the Planning Commission, This memorandum is intended to correct inaccuracies that were written in the staff report associated with agenda item 5, variance 23-03. The following sentences were written erroneously. The first one stating that in 2016 and 17, this property had CCLs issued for the cultivation of cannabis, which were allowed to lapse. Our updated verbiage is that per Cannabis Division records, the associated license CCL-052 was first issued on June 13th, 2017, which was renewed annually and valid until September 5th of 2021 due to a urgency ordinance extension date. And the second statement is that due to the location of prior cultivation activity, the applicant is applying for a new license to allow cultivation in the same location, which is within 1,000 feet of the Hay Fork Seventh-day Adventist Church. The updated verbiage for that one is that given that the licensee held a previous license, the applicant has applied for a renewal of their existing license, not a new license. Additionally, on the Cannabis Division comment is the following comment was unintentionally not included in the staff report that was provided by Cannabis Division staff in order to provide a narrative to explain the history of events that led to the need for this applicant to apply for a variance application. This location is associated with CCL-052, which is a small mixed light license. This license was first approved in 2016. The attached site plan was taken from the applicant's most recently submitted Appendix C document. The structure that triggered this variance request is notated as feature number 15 in attachment 1. Feature number 15 is a permitted greenhouse that was finalized on April 26th of 2021. The applicant's neighbor appealed the issuance of the license, triggering an appeal verification inspection. During the preparation for this inspection, it was discovered that the Seventh-day Adventist Church was less than 1,000 feet via desktop review. Staff was unable to verify the physical distance between the cultivation and the church on the ground due to topography and vegetation. No evidence of the church setback requirement being verified related to the building permit approval was found in the administrative record. Subsequently, the Cannabis Division then rescinded license approval and requested the applicant apply for a traditional variance in order to allow for their permanent greenhouse to comply with the church setback. Trinity County Code Section 17.43.050A only allows for sites that do not meet the residential setback requirement to apply for a commercial cannabis variance. Therefore, this project was routed as a traditional variance. The Cannabis Division is in support of approving this variance request. The updated staff recommendation from planning staff. In the event that the Planning Commission wishes to approve variance 20-23-03, staff has prepared suggested additional findings to add to the resolution 2023-06 in their motion. 1. Under section 2A, no special privilege. A variance cannot be a special privilege extended to one individual property owner. The circumstances must be such that the same variance would be appropriate for any property owner facing similar circumstances. The additional finding from the planning department is that the planning department would not consider this a special circumstance, considering that 2 other sites in the program were identified this year that were previously licensed, that were not compliant within the 1,000-foot church setback. These other sites were on parcels that were large enough to allow for reconfiguration of the cultivation site to comply with the 1,000-foot setback. The subject parcel associated with this variance request is unique in shape and topography that would not allow for the applicant to reconfigure. The attachment is the site plan from the Appendix C document.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff at this time?
I do. So the only thing that I saw was the distance is the issue, but the church said that they're okay with it, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So am I to understand then that there actually would be cultivation using the term canopy within the 1,000 feet?
Yes.
Because it's a greenhouse. Okay. Okay. Not cultivation in terms of using the processing, harvesting facilities and all that kind of stuff. It's actually cultivation, meaning canopy. Okay. Thank you. So I would invite the applicant to speak if you'd like, or the applicant's representative.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission, Tom Belenko. I'm the applicant's advocate at this point. I think they probably will want to comment as well, but just had a couple of threshold matters. Obviously, we support staff's recommendation here that to the extent the variance is there to protect users who might be sensitive, I think it's fair when that user says that they don't have a problem with it, that we consider the variance. If you look at the map on the back of, or is attachment D, I guess, the church setback map, which is part of the staff report, you can see that the church is there right on the corner of Reservoir Road and Highway 3. And the applicant and I and my kids made an adventure out of actually ground truthing this distance. And it is accurate. Google Earth has gotten a lot better in the last 5 years with their measurements. And I think that's probably why this was undiscovered for several years and several iterations of license issuance, because going on the topography, this is up and down 2 ridges. So, there's absolutely no way you're going to see this cultivation. You don't drive past this cultivation. Theoretically, it could cause an odor, but like I said, it is 2 significant features away. And I understand why this enhanced distance is there. And I think it matters in some of the downtown regions where I get that churches don't want to be mixed with this. But in this case, I think, number 1, we have historic cultivation. Number 2, it's out of sight. Number 3, I think the church is okay with it happening. So I'd ask that you grant this variance.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Madison Sullivan and my husband and I are the applicants. I just want to echo what Tom said. I spoke with the few people from the church, the clerk of the church board, as well as the pastor of the church, and they didn't even know what we were doing up there. They've never smelt it. They can't see it. They don't drive past it. We've been licensed, like he said, from the very beginning. We've been in the program. Our Appendix C is complete and has been reviewed. And was noticed, I think, back in December, and then this issue came up. So I'm just asking that you guys will approve this variance so that we can get on with our farming. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we have any technical questions for staff or the applicant? Commissioners?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Sharp?
What is the exact distance that the variance is required?
The exact distance the variance requires, it would be 1,000 feet.
I guess I'm looking for how far is it from cultivation to the actual church?
885 feet.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any further technical or clarifying questions?
When, if I may, it was like,
Commissioner Heaton?
yes, and I didn't quite catch it, but they had there was an active license and then there was a suspension or a break or something of that nature. When did the active license quit, and then and for how long, and then
Ms. Hedke?
Bella Hedke, Associate Planner for the
Okay.
Cannabis Division. So your first question was, when was it approved?
yes, please.
When was it approved would be in the other staff report. Hold on. I don't know the
So
exact.
that's irrelevant. But when did they take a break? But then Rory just showed me the paperwork, so never mind.
Okay, you're
That
good.
answered my question.
Oh, okay, all right.
Thank you. You did a marvelous job. Thank you.
She always does. Okay, so any other technical or clarifying questions from the commissioners? Okay, at this time, we'll open it up to public comment. Do we have any public comment in the room? Any public comment on Zoom? Okay, we will close public comment. Oh, sorry. We do have comment on Zoom.
Catherine?
Catherine Sidman, Lewiston Road, Lewiston. Staff likes it, the neighbors like it. I just can't imagine a reason that you wouldn't approve this as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will close public comment and I will bring it back to the commission for a motion. So in the staff report, they're not providing a recommendation. However, I believe in the memo, they are providing a recommendation. So would any commissioners care to make any motion?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution 2023-06 as approved by the staff's recommendation. The planning department, yeah, I approve.
So Commissioner Barrett, if I understand correctly, you are making a motion to approve the staff recommendation?
Correct.
Motion by Commissioner Barrett. Do we have a second?
I could second that.
Second by Commissioner Heaton. Discussion.
One of my thoughts in regards to this, because I drive up Reservoir Road fairly regularly. And I had no idea that there was even a grow up there, close to the location of the church or any of that nature. And my thing is, it's an existing farm. The church doesn't have an issue with it as well. And it was like, you know, seems fairly straightforward to me that it was like that. It's one of those things that because of technology or whatever that it slipped through before. It's like, you know what, we've had a license grow, and it's like I don't see where we should stop. So why we should hinder them.
Thank you, Commissioner Heaton. Any other discussion? I do have a minor comment, which is when staff discusses variances, you know, it's very helpful to lay out the special use considerations and things like that. But I also pay attention to the general description in section 31, which says that they would suffer some unique hardship because this particular parcel is different due to size, shape, or topography. So that is something that I consider. In this case, you've partially addressed that, talking about the shape and topography of the parcel. So thank you for doing that. And I'd also like to point out that the Trinity County ordinance is unique in requiring the 1,000-foot setback from churches. The state law is schools, you know, residential treatment facilities and so forth. So I think we're unique, but I think that since it is unique to Trinity County, gives us a little bit of flexibility. So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have any further discussion?
Yep. What specifically, and maybe this is for the applicant, I see that you're 115 feet outside of what the setback requires. What specific part of your project is within that 115 feet? Can that be clarified with the maps?
I think it's the new greenhouse.
It's our greenhouse that's 2,000 square feet, and then we have about 3 boxes that are, or rows that I want to say they're 4 by 100.
Okay.
And so that's what would be cut out. Would be half of the outdoor or a good portion of the outdoor garden and then the greenhouse. That's there.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Ellis, did you have a question?
That would be 14 and 15 on the map, is that correct? And 16? Or is it 13 through 16?
Can you come up to the podium, please?
Oh, okay, so it's to the
It looks,
left.
it looks like here it would be 14. It would be 12 and 11.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So
and
the,
15 as well. I'm sorry. 15.
15, 16. So everything pretty much to the south of 11, basically?
Yeah, pretty much everything. And then so even a portion of the two would be taken off too as well.
Commissioners have any further discussion or questions? Secretary, call for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Ellis, how do you vote?
aye.
Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0 to approve the project, the variance.
Good job, Mr. Wexler.
Very good report.
Okay, so we are closing agenda item 5 and moving on to agenda item 6. Appeal of Planning Director's Decision P-23-09. An appeal of the Cannabis Director's decision to deny a commercial cannabis license renewal application CCL-208 for 480 Oak Ranch Road, Lewiston. Appellant Stefan Monev, licensee Stefan Monev, assessors parcel numbers 025-180-030-000. Staff?
Evening, Commissioners. In the packet before you this evening, you should have a memorandum dated June 2nd. Essentially, this memorandum details that the representative of the appellant and the applicant, attorney Benjamin Majid, has requested this item be continued to the July 13th Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you. Do we have questions for staff? Is the applicant here or interested in speaking?
I don't believe the applicant or their agent, applicant, he's also the appellant, but
Okay.
no, they're not here this evening.
Do we have any public comment on this issue, agenda item? So do we need a motion to continue this to July 13th? Yes.
All
Okay.
motion, we move this item to July 13th.
Motion by Commissioner Sharp,
Second that.
second by Commissioner Heaton.
Roll call.
Don't need a roll call vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 7. Agenda item 7, appeal of planning director's decision P-23-10, an appeal of cannabis director's decision to approve a commercial cannabis license application CCL-692 for 504 Oatman Road, Hayfork, California. Appellant Brian and Wendy Young, representing Kathleen and William Dudley Trust. Applicant Michael Deutsch, Trinity Flavor LLC. Assessor parcel number 014-180-095-00. Staff?
Good evening again, Commissioners. You should see another memorandum also dated June 2nd in the packet tonight. And in this case, the applicant's engineer and agent has requested additional time to apply for and obtain an encroachment permit from Caltrans. And we're requesting this item be continued to the June 22nd Planning Commission meeting.
So is the applicant present, wishing to speak? No? Do we have any public comment on this agenda item? In the room or on Zoom? I do have a question. So a meeting on June 22nd would be a special meeting. Is there any reason to do a special meeting versus have this at our regularly scheduled meeting?
So we've already noticed these projects in the Trinity Journal. 2 new ones. Okay. I think that given the time frame, of these items being already postponed from the last meeting, staff is requesting that we hear these items as soon as possible.
These are new items? They weren't continued,
No.
correct?
Yeah, I think you are correct. Yeah, sorry for my
Okay.
mistake there.
Okay, I just, maybe in the future, one thing to be cognizant of is time, that the staff takes time to, organize a meeting. And so I could see that staff time would be better spent if there's no urgency, just continuing something to a regular meeting versus having another special meeting. But that's just a thought. Okay, so do we have a motion by the other commissioners?
I have a question. Can't we change that?
Yes.
Can't we just move it to the 13th?
We could.
But I would note that in yesterday's public notices, we had 2 additional appeals that were
Oh, so there's a total of 3.
1 additional appeal in the newspaper yesterday for the 22nd.
Okay.
So we would have at least 3 agenda items for the
You would.
22nd. Okay. I understand now. Okay. Commissioner Sharp.
I think I'll let this go until we get to our staff reports, and maybe we can bring this back up again just to get some clarification. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a motion by Commissioner on this agenda item?
So that we move it to June 22nd.
Motion by Commissioner Sharp. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Barrett. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 5-0. Item 8, appeal of Planning Director's Decision P-23-12. An appeal of Cannabis Director's decision to approve a commercial cannabis license application, CCL-106, for 1050 Rowdy Bear Road, Hayfork, California. Appellant John Coogan, Cedar Brunette, and Bruce Gardner. Applicant Petco Petkov, Nature Farm, Inc. Assessor parcel number 019-280-003-000. Staff?
Good evening again. So once again, before you, you should have a memorandum dated June 2nd, 2023. Staff is requesting this item be continued to the June 22nd, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to allow staff and the appellant additional time to review project documents.
Thank you. Do we have any input from the applicant or their representative?
Hi, my name is Petko Petkov and I'm the owner of the farm. I'm here today just to express my disappointment and frustration that it's taking super long time for this appeal to be resolved. First of all, we have the same appeal 3 years ago that was in front of the board, and it was voted in my favor to my license to be issued. And technically, this is not a matter of issue with my license, it's a civil matter. Technically, my neighbor, Mr. Coogan, has a house built in my parcel, and he keeps harassing me through his lawyer that he wants that house to be, basically given back to him with property line adjustment. But at the same time, they keep asking me for multiple things that are affecting my license, and I cannot comply. I was fine with a couple of the things that they're asking for, but they keep dragging their feet with time. And I mean, once again, we're postponing this for another 2 weeks, which is very valuable time for me, for my family, for my workers. I mean, we're relying on this season because we already have been through a very tough time last year. And not speaking of that, it takes a while for the planning department to review this. I mean, we have everything done a year ago. We have county inspection done on May of last year, and it took them almost another year to issue my license in the newspaper. To notice, I'm sorry, which I'm really concerned about it. I mean, this is a whole year of pretty much pausing my business, and looks like there will be another season of not working, and this is affecting multiple families here. And I'm just wondering why this should happen. I mean, there should be some steps for the pills to be taken, specifically in this type of situations, because there is a civil matter. It has nothing to do with my license. Or, I mean, I guess all my neighbors are taking disadvantage of the ordinance and trying to appeal this. Technically, there are unlicensed cultivators, and they're appealing my licensed farm, which is kind of not okay. They have multiple illegal structures, no septics. I have everything that is listed in the ordinance, and I'm pretty sure that I'm allowed to do my business normally without being harassing by quite a few unhappy neighbors, which I still don't have the reason until today. All I know is they want their house, and technically this house is mine because I've been paying taxes for the last 7 years on it, and it's in my parcel. So I really think that this needs to be removed from the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Petkov. Do we have any public comment from the room or on Zoom?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission, Tom Belenko, Douglas City. I think the commission and certainly myself have noticed the quality of the staff reports we've been getting lately. And so I'm certainly in no way want to deny staff the time it's using to do this, because it makes everybody's job easier, even mine. I do also want to acknowledge that 2 weeks, 3 weeks matters anytime, but when we're talking about cultivation, 2 weeks in June matters a lot. It is often the difference between, a full season or a partial season. I know everybody's doing the best they can, but it is an impact, and every continuance is like a victory on the part of the appellants. I think as the applicant explained, I think when this appeal comes up, we'll see. I have no doubt that his license will go through, because I know he's checked all the blocks. I want staff to have the time it needs. But I guess this kind of goes back to my earlier public comment. I'd like us to have a little more idea of what a schedule looks like at the outset so we can kind of avoid these things and everybody can be prepared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ray Peterson, District 2. I met Mr. Petkov years ago and helped him along in his journey towards compliance, which was very simple because he is a steward of his land. And I want to point out that his parcel is in a very remote location with only a few other neighbors. And the first time that I went to his property, I saw the situation with the neighbor bullying and abusing the applicant and essentially trying to take some of his land from him. And now he's able to use the licensing process as a weapon against his neighbor, who he's already been a very bad neighbor to. This isn't about odor impacts. It's not about light impacts. It's not about Mr. Petkov being a bad neighbor. It's about his bad neighbor being a very bad neighbor and then being able to use this process as a weapon against this family man who has moved here and invested so much in our communities and stays here to try to do better and to be part of the licensing program. So I think this appeal is just null and void, really. The neighbor is a bad neighbor, and we should appeal the fact that he had built a house on his neighbor's property.
Thank you. Do you have any other public comment from the room? Public comment on Zoom? Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? No? In that case, I would invite a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue the item.
So if I understand correctly, Commissioner Barrett is moving to continue this item to the June 22nd Planning Commission meeting.
That's correct.
Thank you. Second?
Second that.
Motion by Commissioner Barrett, second by Commissioner Heaton.
I had a question for the applicant.
A discussion, please go.
Yes. If we could get you back up here, sir. You said during your report that your neighbors were illegal growers and are trying to take your property.
Yes, sir.
Have you reported this to the sheriff's department?
No, just because I've been a good neighbor for all those years.
Yeah, I would recommend that you do that. And
Well, I've been trying to communicate and do the right thing. I mean, just to resolve this thing the neighborly way. Unfortunately, they decided something else. And as I said, this is not the first time. It's been through planning before. We have multiple letters from Underwood kind of trying to suggest things, but they just don't work for my farm just because everything I have built, it's permitted structures. I'm paying a bunch of fees for this every year. And there's no way for me to remove just because I'm gonna break the sequel law. There's no way for me to remove my licensed grow operation in order to give him his house. which has been
I would suggest if he is doing something illegal next to you, that you do get reports on that and that you bring him with you when you come to defend your case, because that will go a long way in helping you here.
I do have multiple media or over the years that they're growing.
Perfect. Yes. Good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So commissioners, we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. No, thank you. Motion passes 5-0. So that is the end of the agenda items. We move next to Planning Commissioner reports. Planning Commissioners, do you have anything to report? Commissioner Barrett?
I don't know if it's a report, but I've been approached by residents on Readings Creek Road in Douglas City about the road sliding. basically coming down towards Highway 3 from Readings Creek.
Oh, yeah.
And they just wanted me to bring it to the attention of the appropriate people to maybe say, hey, look, before we get too much of a problem, maybe we can get someone to look at it.
You should come over to Southern Trinity. It's like all the roads are like that. That's nothing.
No.
You guys got great roads here.
Is that something we can pass along to the Department of Transportation? Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Any other planning commissioner reports? Did you want to say something earlier?
No, not to report, but I do have questions for staff, so.
Okay, so then maybe we'll move on to planning director's report and,
Then I'll ask.
okay. Director Presley.
Hey, ma'am. Commissioners. So I don't know if anybody watched the Board of Supervisors meeting, but I got to announce that we do have an associate planner. We did fly the position and the person did accept. So currently in transition, doing the live scan, getting the live scan done and getting them up here into housing. So we're extremely excited about that. And with the new CAO coming on board, he authorized me to do an RFP for a senior level planner. So we have 4 of those that are out to different agencies trying to get a senior level planner in here as well. And that's the end of my report.
Great report. Madam Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Sharp.
Yes, so circling back to schedules and regular meetings versus special meetings. And so I think what Commissioner Fall was referring to earlier was that we did approve, a structure for the Planning Commission, which we have yet to get back from, I believe, BOS.
We don't need to have it approved by BOS.
We don't.
No.
So it is in
To
effect.
go with what you voted on, yes.
Okay, so then what we voted on is accurate and in effect. So that being said, I think, what she was trying to get to, and I think the other commissioners, based on their vote, would agree, is that we would like the meetings to be structured in a way that loads up our normal meeting and then issues special meetings on the 22nd for overflow and things that just can't be heard at the regular meeting. And there's, intent in that, and I know in the past there has been, because we've always had 2 meetings, so it just kind of came as it came. But if we could get a little more structured with that, I think we would all be happier. And hopefully save time for you guys. Honestly, that is hopefully where we're saving time, is for staff to do less meetings and more work. So do you guys agree with those comments?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was heading. I know how much time it takes to put together the meetings, so it would be great if you could spend that on other things.
Yeah, we've had some additional conversation and going to work harder to get that way. But we are loaded with a lot of appeals currently.
Sure. That was it. Thank you guys, and thank you for all your hard work. It's great report.
So I have a question for Director Presley. So where are we at with the general plan?
So I just gave a general plan update to the Rotary today, which was really good. I think it went quite long. It was after 1 before we got out of there. But we had our focus group meetings yesterday. And so we're getting the background report finalized currently. And next month, we're going to be doing it's called Maptionnaire. It's going to be an online forum where the community boundaries are going to be set by the residents themselves. So anyone living in any of the communities around the county are going to be able to put their input and to say, I think my county, or I think my community boundary is right here on this road. I think it's over here on this road. And so once that is actually determined, we'll be going to the Board of Supervisors for them to vote on. We have 5 plans that we're already going to do, and then an additional potential 5 plans if they review and they want to see the other 5 plans. So those are community plans. So North Lake being one, and a regionalized plan. But that's basically the next step on what we're going to be doing.
So potentially if Trinity Center wanted to differentiate themselves from Coffee Creek as far as being two separate communities, that would be the venue to do that.
Absolutely. It's great
Okay.
supervisor, but also when we do the community, when we do that map snare, this thing online, that would be when we would be advocating for that particularly. And they'll be voted on at the board level to decide. And we can pull someone, pull some down, or we can add to as well. It's just a budgetary issue that 10 is the number that they're on right now.
So how do the planning commissioners interact then with this focus group and this Maptionary and all that? I mean, how do we keep track of the general plan activities?
So we can request an update meeting, like I think we've had like one or two of the general plan update, and they would come and give you a presentation on where we're actually at in the process. So it's like a full view of that, and then you can ask them questions and timeline stuff.
Is there a way to keep track of what they're doing without actually, having them spend money and come here and make a presentation or do it on Zoom or whatever?
Yes. If you go on to Trinity2050.com, it actually gives you the full layout of what's been done, where we're at right now in the process, and what's upcoming.
Okay.
I probably should have started off with that. My apologies.
Could you repeat that one?
Trinity2050.com. We have our own website.
Do we have any other questions for Director Presley? No? Then I believe we are adjourned. Thank you.
Record.